Welcome to my shop, where we have 8 fingers and 10 times the fun. I'm so getting kicked off of YouTube. So getting kicked off of YouTube. So this week, I decided to challenge myself. Most of the firewood you can get from your local grocery store is hardwood. So I thought, what can I do with that? Having all the tools to be able to square up stock, I figured, why not? Let's see what we can make out of a $7 bundle of firewood. So I decided on a charcuterie board. For those who don't know, charcuterie is a fancy French word that roughly translates to, we are out of bread. So why not? The coffee is good. Let's get to work. My first job was to take this rough wood and run it through the jointer to at least get one edge truly flat. Then using that edge against the fence, I could get another edge flat. This creates a 90-degree corner that I could use as a reference point on the planer or the table saw. So, with a 90-degree corner, I can mill down the pieces into rough stock I could use for my board by keeping that 90-degree corner against the fence and the bed of the table saw. The rough size is a little important here as it will dictate the size of the pieces you will glue up. I ended up with some oak, and what I can tell is maybe red oak from the pieces I found in the bundle, but it revealed a lot of cracking and splitting that I can only assume is because of the rapid kiln drying. We'll address those later. My favorite part, coming up with a pattern based on what I have. I decided this one didn't need to match. I wanted a little chaos in the wood pattern, and I found a pattern that I like, so time to go to glue. The glue! So much glue! I am happy to report that no shirts were harmed in the process of this glue up. Now to wait 24 hours for the glue to dry. The cracks and splitting I mentioned earlier needed to be considered for the glue up to assure a nice solid piece. And just like that, voila, we have a board. Once I checked for the glue up and seams, it was time to take it to the planer to get it to the thickness I liked. And the planer. It is loud and it makes a ton of wood chips, but it also makes nice, smooth, and more importantly, flat surfaces. After running it through the planer, it produced a nice solid surface I could work with. At this point, I want to note that using firewood to make something is fun, but what you didn't see is me inspecting each piece and running them over a metal detector. After all, it is firewood, and I don't want to sacrifice a $50 blade for a $7 piece of wood, so enjoy a coffee and think it through. Now over to my very old and sad crosscut sled that I'm happy to say will be the subject of my next video. I got some new fancy T-track and stops and bells and whistles, and after 9 years, this guy needs to be retired. So here we're just squaring up the edges, getting them nice and true, and then we'll move on to getting an idea of a profile that we like. Once the board was square, I decided it needed some drama, so I took out the jigsaw and I freehanded a curve that I thought would look good. Obviously, it needs some shaping, but I can't complain about that job. Once the profile was done, I decided it needed a hole in it, because why not? Everything's better with a hole. So with a Forstner bit over at my drill press, I made a hole in the board that I just got done making flat. It'll work out in the end, I promise. And at this point, it was time to deal with those cracks, and there were a bunch of them. After a ton of research, I decided that the best approach was resin. I know, there are a million resin videos out there, but I had never worked with it, and I decided if I'm going to learn how to do it, might as well be on a $7 piece of wood and not a $2,000 table for a client. I was able to find a food-safe, FDA-approved resin that I could use. Quick tip, most resin is food-safe after it cures for 30 days. I taped up the edges to stop any spillover, and I poured. I had to wait 24 hours between pours to let the resin harden. Using resin is a definite lesson in patience. I used a tiny little blowtorch to remove the bubbles, and I could bore you with the resin pouring, but there are literally hundreds of videos that explain this process. After the resin had hardened, it was time to remove the tape, get the sanding, sculpting, and shaping. Because this board was primarily oak, it took a lot of sanding and sculpting and shaping to get something that I was happy with at the end. After the shaping and sculpting, I decided the board needed just a little bit more drama. So I had this old piece of black walnut that was a cutoff from a previous project. Having the ability to make my own dowels, I decided it would look good. So with that, I drilled 3 black walnut dowels and 3 holes in the board, and with a little glue and a little persuasion, I was able to smack them in. This, of course, meant more sanding. After all all that work, it was time to get to finishing. I decided some simple mineral oil would work, and look at that wood grain just come to life. Beautiful wood grain. Love it. Now it's time for the obligatory glamour shots and to see what a $7 bundle of firewood could be.